Hello, my name is Jeff Farbman from the Wallace Center at Winrock International. Welcome to this National Good Food Network webinar entitled Community Food, Investing in the Future. Thank you for joining us today. This is the second webinar that has emerged out of our work for the Kellogg Foundation on promising innovations that community food organizations are using to create equity, health, environmental stewardship, and vitality in their areas. Susan will talk more about the project, but today we get to dig into two fantastic organizations who are truly empowering youth through food. It is my job to welcome you. So here I go. The Wallace Center, a business unit of Winrock International, is the host of the National Good Food Network webinars. The Wallace Center has been a leading organization in the movement for a more sustainable and equitable food system for over 30 years. We are focused on advancing regional collaborative efforts around the country to increase the amount of good food, healthy, green, fair, affordable food available to more eaters in all communities. The National Good Food Network, or NGFN, is an initiative of the Wallace Center that accelerates progress towards the Wallace Center's vision. The NGFN is a connector. We connect peer-to-peer, peer-to-expert, businesses and support organizations to best practices and lessons learned, projects to funding, and all of this at a national scale so that innovations spread rapidly throughout the good food world. You can learn more about the great work of the Wallace Center at wallacecenter.org and about the National Good Food Network at ngfn.org, where you can dig into our great resources to help your work, including, as I mentioned, our archive webinars. So now let me bring on my colleague, Susan Lightfoot-Chemp, a program officer here at Wallace Center, whose portfolio includes our work with community-based food enterprises. Susan?
Great, thanks, Jeff, and thanks everybody who's tuning in today. It is a beautiful, glorious day here in Little Rock, Arkansas, and just quickly before we get started, I wanted to send out our love and solidarity to friends out in Northern California, many farmers and food systems organizations that are facing some devastating fires, and just want to send our love and support out to you. And as Jeff said, I have the great privilege of leading the Wallace Center's work in community-based food systems. And I just want to quickly tell y'all what we're up to over here. Over the last couple of years, the Wallace Center has increasingly recognized that a very large part of the good food movement is driven by nonprofit community-based organizations. Many of you are listening in today. And you all are building community through food and food through community. And we strive to be a resource for you. Similar to how the Wallace Center works across the board for community-based organizations. We also facilitate capacity building, technical assistance, and training opportunities. And we develop peer-to-peer networking, resource sharing, et cetera, opportunities for you all to share resources with one another. And this webinar series is right in line with that. The Kellogg Foundation is our primary funder in this work. And over the past number of years, the Wallace Center has worked with the Kellogg Foundation to produce the From the Ground Up report that Jeff mentioned before. This is a research project wherein we scanned the nation to uncover innovative community-based projects and bring attention to the incredible work happening in communities across the country. We asked our networks, many of you are included here, to nominate projects and organizations for this scan. And there were over 600 organizations nominated for this, and then 61 projects selected and featured in the final report. Within these 61 projects, there is a very wide diversity of organizations, of project types, strategies, et cetera. But there's definitely a common set of values shared amongst the projects, and that really everyone is focused on equity, sustainability, democracy, social justice, and food sovereignty. And I think you'll really see that today in our presenters in Ma'o and Grow Dat. Through analysis of these 61 organizations, we identified 8 themes or trends in innovation that are pictured here. We reviewed these in our last webinar in August, and so you can go back to that and learn more about each of these innovation themes. And today we'll be focusing in on investing in the future, which is one theme that I'm particularly inspired by and excited about. There are some incredible organizations and programs out there that are cultivating a new generation of conscious and engaged farmers, entrepreneurs, and eaters. And they're using different approaches to invest in the future through leadership development, new farmer training, and education. And once again, we were looking for common threads and trends, and we noticed that there was a real focus amongst all these organizations on financial sustainability. Most, if not all, were using some kind of earned income strategy, and again, we'll see that today in the examples of the organizations that I'll be presenting. And there's also, creative use of capital and in-kind support. The featured projects in the report are featured here, or pictured here. Clockwise from the top left, they include the Social Justice Learning Institute in California, the South Carolina Community Loan Fund in South Carolina, Sibley East Farm to School program in Minnesota, Denver Urban Gardens in Colorado, Regional Sustainable Development Partnerships program in Minnesota, Pie Ranch in California, Carrot Project in Massachusetts, and last but not least, Ma'o Organic Farms in Hawaii. Ma'o is tuning in with us today from Wai'anae, Hawaii. And even as a community with a rich agricultural heritage, fertile organic soils, and year-round growing conditions, Wai'anae is one of the most food insecure and poorest regions of Hawaii. The majority of the community struggles with preventable diseases, homelessness, hunger, and poverty. In 2002, the Wai'anae Community Redevelopment Corporation was established as a nonprofit 501c3 Hawaiian social enterprise to develop systemic approaches to solving these problems. WCRC started Ma'o Organic Farms, a working certified organic farm that combined place-based experiential education and green industry entrepreneurship to create college and career pathways for new leaders. It is my great honor to introduce our first presenters today. We have Kukui and Gary Maunakea IV and Kaui Sana. Kukui is the executive director of Ma'o Organic Farms, and she was born and raised in the Wai'anae community. She holds a BA in Pacific Island and Hawaiian Studies and a Bachelor of Science in Cultural Anthropology, and has over 20 years experience teaching and managing nonprofits. She was recently a National Fellow in the Kellogg Foundation's Racial Equity and Healing Fellowship program. Gary is the managing director and is responsible for overseeing agricultural production, expansion, and training of staff and volunteers. He holds a BA in Environmental Studies and Political Science and an MA in Sustainable Development. He was born and raised in a farming region in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And Kaui Sana is the farm manager. Kaui is 28 years old and was born and raised in Wai'anae. She coordinates field crop production at Ma'o and was a graduate of their youth leadership program in 2008. She has traveled widely as a representative of Ma'o, having visited farms and explored indigenous food systems in Thailand, Italy, and Aotearoa, New Zealand. She holds a BA in Hawaiian Studies and was a recent fellow of the Kamehameha School's first Native Fellowship program. Welcome, and you have the floor.
Okay, aloha mai kako. I've been pushed to the front. This is Gary here. I've been pushed to the front, and I'm going to be doing most of the, just a quick slide presentation this morning, but Kaui and Kukui in the background. And so when we get to a time to answer questions, feel free to direct questions towards them. So we got a beautiful introduction there, Ma'o Organic Farms. We're located on the western side of the island of Oahu. These are the images that are fairly synonymous for Hawaii, and we're probably talking to a bunch of folks that have at one time or another visited the state of Hawaii, or seen what the state of Hawaii looks like on Hawaii Five-0, or one of the many TV shows or movies that's filmed out here. Blue water, blue skies, beautiful vistas. But this is more the reality of our community. It's unbeknownst to the general population in the state. Our community has the largest homeless population, and in fact the state of Hawaii has the largest per capita homeless population in the United States. We suffer from multiple deficits, and that's not going to be the narrative today, but I just want to give you a backdrop of our work and where we work from. We are a rural community. We did grow food at one point or another, but that profession and that culture of growing food has now largely left us. We have a 50,000 population, of which 45% of the population is actually under the age of 25 years. this is sort of a snapshot of some of the social demographics we're working to solve. I want to just note the demographics towards the bottom of this chart and the difference between the Waianae region and the state of Hawaii. Most important to us is the progression of young people through the public education system, from intermediate school through to high school, and then whether they're able to work and attain a bachelor's degree. And I'll tell you a little bit more about how we operate to achieve a rectification of these problems. So I would say that angrily in 2001, 2002, we started Ma'o. Kukui and I, and a group of friends, were either fresh out of grad school, we'd been working in public education or in community-based economic development for a little while, and we were fairly angry with the state of our community. Personally, our children were young and they were going through the public education system, struggling, and so we, some of our kupuna, some of our elders challenged us to do something about it. And so for 2 years, starting in about 1999, we were involved in visioning processes in our community, and the first thing we really wanted to do was produce more food. So we found some land, we started growing food. The second thing we wanted to provide is a pathway to college and career. We realized that the public education system was not preparing young people for work or for going to college. And one of the things they weren't preparing them for was to become young entrepreneurs, or to becoming young creative people. So in 2002, like Susan said, we started the project. We were fortunate to get funds from USDA's Community Food Systems Initiative and from the Federal Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Native Americans. And we started by leasing 5 acres of land, and we produced some food. We were so stoked to produce 5,000 pounds of food. We had 8 college interns. The 2 young men to the left we're still following their trajectory through the community. The young man on the left, Travis, is a truck driver with his local business, with his own business. Manny, the young man on the right, is now a diesel mechanic working for a big operation here. And just to give you a sense of how our programs work, we've shared this sheet with you. We talk about it being an awai, and awai is a Hawaiian word that deals with the water system that flows to taro or kalo cultivation, and it's a system that comes off our rivers, takes water through taro patches or taro lo'i, and reinvigorates each of those taro patches, and eventually gets to the ocean where it has all kinds of nutrients to help the estuarine ecosystem. So we thought it was a good way to envision a pipeline of the education services that we were involved in. So if you just look quickly left to right in the middle, we have a lot of young people engaged in early entrance here, and I look out the window today and there's a bunch of young people from one of the local schools visiting in our Farm to Fork program. From there, we run high school internship programs, and eventually getting to a ramp-up program, which is a kind of a boot camp for young people from transitioning from high school to college. Our core program is the Youth Leadership Training Program. So that's a 2-year college-based program. The young people in that program are full-time in college, at community college mainly, and they work part-time on the farm here. They're compensated for that, and they receive free tuition to the local college. Within that program, we have a peer-to-peer mentorship program, which is called Step Up. And so we break our group of young people into smaller groups so we can achieve some of the work we do on the farm. Kaui, who's sitting beside me to my right today, she's traversed all of these boxes, and now she has become, bottom right-hand corner, the manager of the farm, the general manager of the farm. I would say that Susan was right. She made a slip and said she's traveled widely. Kaui has traveled wildly as well, so she can probably tell you some of those things later. Then, this webinar, and this is our first ever webinar, so we want to thank the Wallace Centre for inviting us to do this and acknowledge the Kellogg Foundation. But one of the things we were asked is, what are the challenges that we've overcome, and is there a toolbox of things that we've used to overcome those challenges that we can share with you folks. This is a laundry list that was developed in about 30 seconds because the challenges of running an organic farm and the challenges of running a youth program, some of you folks listening out there will understand this. There's too many to mention. A quick list of those things. When we first started, the conventional agricultural industry, and even to this day in Hawaii, still thinks organic food won't work. And we've come from a place in Hawaii where Hawaiians pre-contact produced all of the food they needed, 100% of the food they needed, and did that very ecologically. Since then, we've been involved in plantation sugar, plantation pineapple, and now the large monocrop industrial ag products we produce are seed and genetically modified biotech seeds. So still to this day, the organic farming, food farming industry has looked off as very dubiously. We don't kid anyone about it, though it is tough. So we've had crop failures. When I look outside the window, there's just as many weeds as there are plants growing. Being in the tropics, we have a lot of diseases. Every few years, we try and grow tomatoes. We do grow some of them for us to eat, but we don't grow any for the commercial market because it's just tough with diseases. And then it's a beautiful day here. It's probably in the very low 80s, but Koei just opened the NOAA website to look at the weather, and there's a big storm headed this way over the weekend, which will probably bring torrential rains. Turning towards the youth, most of the youth in our programs, this is the first job. So we're not just teaching them how to work on a farm, but we're teaching them how they should act in a job. So when to arrive, when to leave, when to go to the bathroom, how to communicate with their peers and their superiors, that they shouldn't be using a cell phone while they work, and all those sort of good things. The Hawaii nonprofit funding environment is quite small, and we've struggled a little bit to find multi-year funding, and the federal government has been able to provide those kinds of assets, as have folks like the Kellogg Foundation. So we spend some time in the nonprofit ecosystem here, helping to get the local funders to understand how important it is to provide multi-year funding so that we can build out our programs and scale them. And then how to raise funds to expand and scale your programs. We've gone from 5 acres, and we now have 24 acres certified organic. We've gone from 8 young people as interns to as many as 50, and the other programs have all grown to raise funds to capitalize various projects, and then to purchase land, because we've now been able to purchase 19 acres. Those things have been challenges that I think we've figured out to some degree. And then, like most people out there who are doing college-based programs, recruitment, retention, and attrition are huge elements that we have looked at in many different ways. I'm going to share some of the ways we've looked at those challenges. And firstly, just quickly to run through the organic farming, the principles of organic farming that we used are fairly simple, basic elements, and the key to our system is biodiversity. Biodiversity, I would say, and soil management. And we have wonderful soil in this valley. In Lualulei Valley, we have a verticil series soil, which is very unique, a soil more associated with continents like Africa and India. So it's up to us to take care of that soil and to plant a biodiversity of products. Chanel on the right there, who graduated from our programs 2 years ago and who's now at 4-year university, she's holding carrots, which most of the tropical agricultural experts had said that we couldn't grow. So these carrots will probably head to a high-end restaurant because they're baby and they're funky and they're really, really tasty. One of the first people to work with us was a kupuna, an elder from our community, Mr. William Isla Sr. He needed to simplify some of the more complicated things that we were kind of attacking in our sort of a non-profit community-based way. And he once said to us that all we're really doing here is showing kids that love, respect, and the willingness to work is what they should live by. And we've taken that mantra into everything we've done. At the get-go, we had a strategic plan, and we have a logic model, which I can show you sort of a version of it, that we've stuck pretty strictly to. Many times over the course of the last 16 years, there's been attempts to deviate us onto various paths, but our value proposition now, growing food and growing young leaders, we've tried to stick very strictly to that logic model. You're going to see a table soon that illustrates our commitment to the enterprise and commitment to social enterprise. Raising earned income is not a secondary thing we do. It's a core mission that we have in our organization. The nonprofit world always calls out to have collaborations and partnerships, and we've tried to make those partnerships very intentional. We try to bond into various ecosystems that we're in, whether it's the sustainable agriculture, the sort of experiential education folks, or various ecosystems like that. And we've tried to grow those ecosystems or be part of the growth of those ecosystems in Hawaii, and with the stuff that's going on with community food, we want to be active in those ecosystems as well. And then I think both us and Grow Dat, you'll see some systems that we've in some ways big borrowed, adapted to our own environment, and those systems we've employed to help youth succeed. And I'll show you some of those systems right now. We operate an incentivized compensation system. So every semester we evaluate young people, and on the far right-hand column, you'll see the GPA of 3 young people that were in C11, cohort 11. So these 3 young people did fairly well in school last semester. Then the columns that start commitment, teamwork, product growth, and so on, those are the similar GPA scores we've given to that particular person for their farm performance. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, those are the farm co-managers. So they're really a peer-to-peer evaluation system. We have averaged the farm GPA, and then we've aggregated it with their school GPA. And so person 1 under C11 there managed to get a 3.2 total aggregated GPA. And if you look down to the table at the bottom right, if that person has over 30 credits in college and has scored over 3.0, so they've scored 3.2, any extra hours they do is paid $13 an hour, which in the agriculture industry in Hawaii is quite high. Our average minimum wage right now is $9.25 in the community. So this is really helps young people to be inspired to do a bit more. Then on the farm side of things, and I'm taking a little bit too much time here, so I'll try and speed through some of these slides. But earned income is a pretty critical part of our organization. We're generally a $2 million organization, and for the most part, earned income has provided between 1/4 to 1/3 of everything we do. And just note that the red line is the tracking of our ROI, or it's the tracking of our pathway of young people. So the marriage between the enterprise, the earned income, and the interns, and then vice versa, is extremely important for us. And then the intentional collaborations, we started at Leeward Community College, and we still have a really fascinating relationship with them. And now that has blossomed into an agricultural program at the University of Hawaii, West Oahu, which is only 30 minutes from the farm here. The most important thing to note about this is that it's not a program to just simply produce farmers. It's designed as a program to produce food systems or community food systems professionals. And so a lot of our young people now can see a 4-year college pathway, and they can see multiple careers afterwards. The chancellor of the time, when this program was being developed, he courted us and asked us what sort of program we would design, and so we were implicit in this development. And then there's so many organizations that have helped in one way or another contribute to our success, and we've borrowed ideas from them. And these are some of them. Obviously you're seeing this yourselves. Some of them you may not be familiar with. The second one, Total Impact Capital. It's a merchant bank venture capital organization. We actually had our business model readapted with the help of those folks, and made our business model really understand the relationship between youth throughput and income. The third website there is Te Wānanga o Aotearoa. That is the New Zealand Māori Indigenous University system. It went from about 400 young people in university to 30,000 young people in university. Very experiential learning, very place-based learning. Folks are all probably familiar with the Food Project in Boston, really great folks, with the UC Santa Cruz Center for Agroecology, and Intervale up in Vermont. We've borrowed things from those folks there, and we've been to Santa Cruz to hang out with those guys for the last few years. Then in Hawaii, we have some fascinating programs out here in Hawaii, and I just mentioned 4 of those. Paipai o He'ia is a program on the windward side. They've reestablished an ancient fish pond, which was a heck of a lot of work for them. Ho'okua Aina, the second one there, is a taro project, working with in-school and intern youth. The Kokua Hawaii Foundation is Jack and Kim Johnson's foundation. They do a lot of school garden funding. And then the last organization, Holy Mauloa, they're an organization that has taken the multi-year funding to a next level. They fund us for 5 years currently, and they've gathered together a cohort of like-minded organizations. And then I did promise quickly to give you an idea of our logic model, and without going too deep into it, the middle area surmises the transition in young people through our programs, from anywhere being welfare bound to becoming an entrepreneur, through to being from being powerless to be able to speak to power. And Koe is on the young woman on the right there, arm wrestling with the First Lady, or the former First Lady, and that was a very significant part of our history. She was invited here in 2011, and in the end did a 1-hour roundtable with youth from our community. Okay, it's not going forward, but let me just see. There we go. So where are we today? So we now have 50 college interns. We're producing on 24 acres of land, and we're getting close to producing 200,000 pounds of food per year. So our goal is to really push the envelope on producing more certified organic food. And then our next challenge is to scale. We really feel that we have developed a model that is scalable with Total Impact Capital. We've looked at the financial picture, and so we're scurrying around looking for more land, and all 3 of us have been looking at researching 250 acres, which is across the other side of our valley. And then, important in everything we do, have a bit of fun and eat really well. The top right-hand photo is our beets that was in a Bon Appetit magazine that visited the farm. And, we eat our beets, we eat all our food. I think that one of the biggest problems with industrial agriculture, or the not so good food that's produced, is that people don't eat it. One of the things that young people do here is they take a lot of food home with them. They're immersed in the food culture, and then they eat food, either food here or at one of the many restaurants we sell to. The last thing I want to say is mahalo nui, especially to Jeff and Susan, because they made this process really easy for us and very comfortable. Ni huli ka lima I lalo piha ka opu means if you turn your hands to the soil, if you turn your hands down and work hard, your tummy, your belly, your opu is going to be full of good food. So mahalo nui for listening. We can ask questions later. Thank you.
Right on. Mahalo, Gary. Thank you so much for that presentation. Y'all are very sophisticated in your model, and I'm looking forward to kind of digging into those templates a little bit more and understanding how that works. And just really appreciate you sharing the story of the work. And, I just want to I think it's important to note that, you know, Ma'o is well-deserved being featured in this, the report, the From the Ground Up report. But it's also important to note that there are numerous other organizations out there that are innovative and doing incredible work that aren't in the report, but still embody the same ethos and deserve the same level of attention. And, you know, amongst them is Grow Dat Youth Farm down in New Orleans. Grow Dat Youth Farm was founded with a mission to nurture young leaders through the meaningful work of growing food. Each year, Grow Dat hires young people from across New Orleans to learn how to grow sustainable produce and to participate in workshops about sustainable agriculture, food justice, and youth leadership. Since 2011, more than 200 youth ages 15 to 21 have participated in their leadership programs. And over the past 5 years, these young people have transformed a former golf course in City Park into a farm that now generates 25,000 pounds of food each year. A beautiful farm at that. In total, they have harvested more than 100,000 pounds of foods, 30% of which they've donated to the community, and the other 70% of which they've sold through their on-site farm share program in the Crescent City Farmers Market. Joining us today to tell us about Grow Dat's approach and strategy is Clara Lyle, the Social Enterprise Manager at Grow Dat. Clara is a native New Yorker with experience in kitchens and classrooms and on farms. She moved to New Orleans in 2013 to teach first grade before spending a year working as a line cook at Cochon Restaurant. In 2015, she took off across the country with Roving Restaurant Outstanding in the Field, where she met dozens of farmers and chefs across the country. She returned home in 2016 to begin working with Grow Dat at the intersection of her passion for local, sustainable agriculture, food justice, and education. During her time at Grow Dat Youth Farm, Clara has written and implemented a new culinary program and launched a fundraising farm dinner series that has raised over $50,000 for the organization to date. Clara graduated from Cornell University in 2012. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to hearing about Grow Dat.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to the Wallace Center for inviting us to participate in this. I'm really thrilled about the work that you're doing and creating these shared learning opportunities for the food and farming community. And thank you to Mao for the opportunity to hear about your work. It's incredibly inspiring and definitely can relate to a lot of the struggles that you guys were describing earlier. So I'm Clara Lyle. I came back to Grow Dat, and I've been able to really blend my passion for teaching and youth development with sort of my knack for event planning and fundraising. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about our work at Grow Dat and our goals and the vision of our leadership program, and then maybe touch a little bit on the successes and a few of our failures in our earned revenue fundraising approach. So just to back up a little bit, New Orleans ranks among the worst metro areas in the country for food insecurity, childhood poverty, and rates of disconnected youth. Currently, 1 in 5 residents are food insecure, and more than 30% live in households below the federal poverty level. 20% of the young people in New Orleans, ages 16 to 24, are not working and not in school. And so as a high school teacher in New Orleans, our founding director, Johanna Gilligan, who's the one laughing in the upper left corner, recognized that her students consistently experience an unhealthy and unjust relationship to the food system. They were suffering from diet-related diseases such as diabetes, and they worked low-wage service jobs, often in fast food chains. And their families often didn't have access to fresh and healthy produce. So in 2011, with the help of a like-minded cohort of folks who you see around her, and also with Tulane University, Johanna founded Grow Dat with a mission to nurture young leaders through the meaningful work of growing food. And at Grow Dat, people from different backgrounds come together with a goal to create a more just and sustainable food system. We work collaboratively to grow food and to educate and inspire youth and adults to build power to create personal, social, and environmental change. Each year, we hire up to 50 young people, aged 15 to 22, from 9 partner schools in Orleans Parish. And they all participate in a paid 5-month leadership program. You spend 50% of their time learning and practicing sustainable agriculture. They plant, they cultivate, harvest, sell, and donate nearly now 25,000 pounds of produce this year, which is our new goal. And youth distribute this through a 75-member farm share program and also sell directly at our Crescent City Farmers Market. The other 50% of their time is spent in educational workshops and skill building activities on site and at partner organizations. And these learning activities are designed to develop key leadership skills like communication and public speaking, agency and self-confidence, and of course, a knowledge of sustainable agriculture and food justice. So we really think of our program as an ecosystem of youth development in which real work, real accountability, and real talk work together to help young people develop soft skills related to social and emotional intelligence. And we focus on social and emotional intelligence in part because these are the skills that employers report needing most in new employees, including communication, accountability, self-efficacy, and collaboration across diverse teams. Aspects of our model are very closely borrowed from the Food Project in Boston. Johanna worked closely with Greg Gale in the early years of our organization. And I'm sure that a lot of this might be familiar to a number of organizations across the country, including Mao Organic Farms, so both urban and rural. And we were really lucky in our early years to have now Dr. Josh Shoup of Tulane University do some evaluation of our model. And so the image that you see on the screen right now is from his work on our farm. And I'm just gonna delve a little bit into how this works for us. So I'm gonna start with real work. As I discussed, Grow Dat Youth engage with real work through rigorous farm work and participation in these workshops. Our curriculum is built around 3 curriculum pillars: food justice, sustainable agriculture, and community leadership. Community leadership is an internally agreed upon term that's really about not just the skills that we need to take care of ourselves, but to make change in our community. So the program is planned in units and begins really with an introduction to this community leadership through frameworks for behavioral standards and for the expectations that we have around work. And some of these workshops include gender and sexuality, financial literacy, and our visions guidelines. Throughout the program, we sort of move from a focus on the self to a focus on systems. So by the end of the program in June, the workshops are more closely related to our food justice pillar. And those would include workshops like food and climate change or neoliberalism in the food system, which is a favorite of our young people, which really helps to unpack some of the systemic oppression that is happening at the food systems level. All of the work, farm and workshops, are conducted in crews of 10 to 12 youth. So this is a crew in the image above. Each crew is led by an adult crew leader and by 2 assistant crew leaders. Assistant crew leaders are graduates of the leadership program who have returned to help lead the leadership program. So the crew leader is Asia Vinay, and she's in the bottom center, and their crew leaders are on either side, Sarah and Sean, and then that's just part of the crew right above them. And by engaging in this real, meaningful, hard farm work side by side every Saturday and one day after school, youth are really given this amazing opportunity to connect to the earth, have the soil in their hands, and get to know their peers. And crew leaders are also able to build these deep relationships with their crew members through this work. And that helps to prepare our crew leaders, who are the guides for our crew members through this journey of change, which brings us to real accountability. These deep relationships are built through clear expectations and communication. At Grow Dat, we really lead with our values, and we use a system that honors the positive qualities of young people and also acknowledges and discourages limiting behaviors, that might be obstacles to the type of change that we're trying to achieve with them. And so we're trying to create a space in which we're protecting these clearly stated shared goals and expectations for individual relationships. And we also recognize that sometimes this requires youth to maybe change a certain behavior. So the accountability piece is really, in my view, from this combination of our visions guidelines and our standard system. Our visions guidelines are the multiculturalism and anti-oppression framework we use to cultivate honest and meaningful conversations across difference at both the staff level and also the crew member level. And so at the crew member level, we live into guidelines that help youth engage with questions about how their behavior might be affecting other people. So one of these is make space, take space, which I learned a lot about in myself. And make space, take space reminds crew members who might speak very frequently to allow other crew members to speak, or vice versa. Someone's not, super comfortable talking in a group setting to really challenge themselves to take up that space in the group setting. I'm going to pause for a second and just say, if you hear a lot of chirping in the background, I'm brooding chicks next to my office desk, and so that is what you might be hearing. And now I'm going to move on to our standard system. Our standard system is also adapted from the Food Project in Boston, and it's introduced on the very first day of program alongside our personal goal setting workshop. Crew members review each standard and they sign off to signify that they understand and agree to follow our standard system. So up on your screen right now, you can see what this standards and violations chart looks like. It's used as a behavioral expectation, and so once crew members earn a violation, they are checked off on one of those boxes, and each violation has a certain number that they can earn before they're being fired. And if they are fired, if it's a non-safety related issue, they can go through our rehiring process. So for example, if a young person doesn't show up to work, they're going to earn a violation in our professionalism category, and they have 7 opportunities or chances to do that before potentially being fired or being fired. And it's really through this clear communication of expectations and a clear tracking system that helps us keep tabs on the progress of our crew members and stay in tune with some of the behavioral changes that occur over the course of the program. But this deep change that we are observing doesn't really just come from the rigorous work or from a real accountability system, but from the mechanisms through which we communicate why this change matters to the young person and to the shared goals of the larger Grow Dat community. And so that's where this third piece of real talk comes in. I'm going to go back to that original screen. And real talk is our system of kind and honest communication and solidifies the intimacy of each crew. On a biweekly basis, crew members hear feedback from their crew leader in the form of 3 positives and 1 delta, a delta being an opportunity for change. And they also receive any violations they have earned over the past 2 weeks that may affect the bonus on their paycheck. Similar to Mao Organic Farms, we also have a system that's an incentivization. At the end of each pay period, young people who have not received any violations get a $15 bonus at the end of that pay period. So crew members are receiving this feedback in front of the whole group. And this is a choice that really helps to frame feedback as an opportunity for change and not an opportunity for shame. And this shared vulnerability also fosters meaningful relationships across difference within each crew. So over the course of the program, the consistent use of these tools really helps to build youth confidence by recognizing their positive contributions to the work and guiding youth towards the areas where they can continue to advance. It's also a model for the young people of how to give positive, constructive feedback to each other. The ecosystem is a set of tools that really fosters youth development and helps young people make small steps towards deepening their interpersonal and professional skills. And so last year we had 90% of the young people who were hired in January that graduated from our program in June, and 100% of our crew members self-reported leadership growth. And I want to interject here a little challenge that we've been talking about internally with this standard system that I just explained, which is how to handle issues of attendance and young people who are still in high school and maybe having challenges of transportation or other challenges at home, and how to make sure that we are creating an inviting space for them that is both rigorous and also accommodating to a lot of the difficulties or challenges they may be facing in their personal life. So that's definitely something we're investigating internally right now. But I really want to take a second and talk about Alex, who's in the top right-hand corner, right behind Mallory, who has her hands on her hips. And he came to our program at a point when he was really struggling. And he self-admittedly was kind of hanging out with a crew of folks who were involving him in activities he felt nervous and a little uncertain about. And he applied and was hired at Grow Dat in the spring of 2016. And within months, his teachers reported a rapid change in his school behavior and his friend group. Alex really took to farming like a fish to water, and he, through our workshops, through our games, really began to come out of his shell and embrace the organizational culture and space at Grow Dat. He returned in 2017 to join our advanced leadership program, our year-long program for assistant crew leaders, where he deepened his farming content knowledge and began to master facilitation skills. I'm going to take us to an image where you can see more about that. And in the spring, by the time the new cohort had come around, he was leading games and workshops. He was leading tours and ag tasks. He just graduated from high school. He's come back to Grow Dat as a farm fellow, where he's working full-time as a farmer and participating in staff trainings and meetings. And he's not the only one that has come through and become a staff member. And we are always looking for ways to expand our tiered leadership model and to provide some opportunities for graduates of the program to come back and be the guides for future Grow Dat youth leaders. So just checking how I'm doing on time. I'm going to take 2 minutes and just talk a little bit about our strategic and earned revenue model. So we have also been in the business of trying to do this part funded, part earned revenue model. And as of now, 75% of our budget is funded through grants and foundation support. Roughly 25% is funded through individual donors, and 25% is funded through earned revenue strategy. And in early 2015, we went also through a strategic planning process. And the main purpose of this was really to brainstorm ways that Grow Dat could expand its impact on the community and also to become more financially independent. And we were striving for a number of having 50% of our budget fundraised through earned revenue. And we identified a bunch of ways we could do this. We were looking at field trips and learning tours, community workshops, farm dinners, and we've now piloted a bunch of these approaches, steadily increasing our field trips. We're hoping to have 2,000 young people from across New Orleans, sometimes the region, to come through our site this year. We have more site rentals. We're about to host our 8th farm dinner, and this has been a really interesting journey. And it has become incredibly clear that we are not at a 50% earned revenue strategy, and that we're likely not ever going to get there unless we drastically change the mission and direction of our program. It is almost impossible, it seems, in some of the financial workings we've been finagling to find margins that allow for a significant revenue stream while keeping our space accessible to the public and our staff doing work that we feel is aligned with our mission. So that's all to say, we're not rethinking the purpose of these strategies. Our ability to connect youth from across New Orleans to our site via these field trips, I think, is a public good, as are the community workshops that we offer. just this past Tuesday, we had 20 participants in our workshop on an herbalist approach to mental health and wellness. And those are offered on a sliding scale, but it has caused us to really rethink how these strategies play a role in our larger fundraising goals, and maybe perhaps some of the limitations of this social enterprise trend. So just to bring it all around, like Susan said at the beginning, we've actually graduated more than 250 young people from this program, and these young people have transformed what was a former golf course in City Park with soil that is mostly sand and clay into a farm that now generates 25,000 pounds of food a year. So we're constantly growing and learning from our own positives and deltas and from others. And yeah, we hope you reach out and come visit us anytime. And I think that is it. I'm happy to answer any questions that folks have.
Great. Thank you so much, Clara. I really appreciate you walking us through some of those challenges that y'all are facing around earned revenue. And I think that's maybe something we can dig into in this time this afternoon that we have for discussion and Q&A. So, hey, Jeff, you want to explain again how questions work?
Yeah, sure. Over in the control panel on the side of your web page, there is a place to enter your question. It's a ask a question for our panelists box, and you are muted. So that's the way you can send in questions. We have a few great ones queuing up. So thank you all for that. We will try to get to them. And I think, Susan, you wanted to kick it off with a question you were thinking of.
Sure. Well, and I noticed one of the questions in there is directly related to this kind of 25%, earned revenue, and kind of feeling like you're maxing out at that point. And I'm curious, Gary and the Ma'o crew, if that's also what you've experienced, and if you can kind of speak to the limitations of earned income strategies while also keeping that in balance with your mission.
Okay, from our side of things, ultimately land and labor are the driver of how much we can produce without going into a situation where we're overusing land, because, for example, we use a cover crop most years, if not every other year. So we've kind of hit a place where our efficiencies will only increase if we push the land too hard or we have more labor. So, the state of Hawaii is 85–90% dependent on imported foods. So the more land we can obtain, the better for our state as a whole. But also in our community, we suffer from urban sprawl and urban development, as well as resort development. So one of the things we're looking at is land put in agricultural production as a conservation mechanism. One of the things we studied with our business modeling was where we could get to with more land, and I think we've established that our efficiencies will increase with more land, and some things that we can get better at, including as youth come through our programs and take up full-time employment like Hawai'i. They're versed in the system, and they can work to improve the system. Last year we hit 33%, where we'd been around 25 to 30%. We're probably about all we can get to. We probably can get about 35–40%, maybe, if we squeeze a few things here. But with more land, I feel we've modeled a process where we can get to as much as 75% earned income, 25%, and the acreage we'd probably need is about 250 to 300 acres to do that, and then we'd be quadrupling the number of youth going through our program. So land is the driver, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
Can
that's definitely.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Sorry, so just out of curiosity, where is that being sold to, and how is that income coming in?
Yeah, when we started, most of the small farms, we call them, market gardens or truck farms here in Hawaii, they rely on on an intermediary, so a distributor. When we got into it, we wanted to take control of the whole system, the whole process. You know, we didn't want to be gouged by a distributor, but we also wanted to tell our story. So when we take our food wherever it goes, we have 2 young people who have been through our programs. They're drivers right now for us. We've about 2/3 of our food is sold wholesale. 1/3 is sold retail, and that's by way of 2 farmers markets we're at and a CSA program, which has just over 100 members. On the wholesale side, we sell to roughly 20 restaurants that are, you know, we use the slow food term co-producers a lot. We try to find people that are really aligned with our mission. They spend a bunch of time here. They'll do fundraisers here. We're collectively dedicated to community-based food systems and healthy food systems, nutritious food systems. That being said, we also sell to Whole Foods. There's 2 Whole Foods on Oahu here. When they came to Oahu, they were very good about trying to sell as much diversity as they possibly could from local farms, and paving the way for us. So they've been very good to us, and we have a friend who's one of the managers of one of the stores. We probably sell only about 8 or 10% of our food in our community, and so that's a big issue that we have worked hard to rectify. And even with the local farmers markets we do, who have double bucks programs and food stamps, snack programs, it's very difficult. So our approach to that, at least for our adjacent local community, is to get more food into the hands of the young people in our programs, so that they become sort of the catalyst to their families changing the way they eat. Yeah.
Great, thank you. You know, I'm curious to hear from both of your organizations about how you're capturing the impact of your work. You know, it's increasingly important for us to be able to communicate back to our funders and partners and community, et cetera, to keep that other 75% of our funding coming in. So I'm curious if you have any tips you could share with your peers on how you're doing this, and also how you're integrating it into your daily practice.
I can start. This is a really common conversation at Grow Dat. There are a lot of different feelings about assessment and what assessment should look like. And in an area in the country and in a current education system where young people are very heavily tested and often that data is quantified, we are somewhat resistant to that approach. So we're doing a lot of observation and a lot of self-reporting. So young people sort of taking these self-reported assessments at multiple points throughout the program. And that's how we are currently, those 2 mechanisms, the self-reporting and the observation, are the ways that we're really looking at impact right now. And because we're such a young organization, we haven't been able to do a long-term longitudinal study yet, and that is definitely something that we're eager to do at some point in the future, and to try and find funding for in the next few years.
We're a similar situation. I think the 2 metrics that are sort of the hub metrics that we use are, you know, food produced, whether that's you measure it by pounds or dollars, and youth success in college. So how many young people enter that system, how many people we train in our system, and then how many people graduate. So that we know right now that of the 300 and something young people we've put into college, we've graduated about 40% of them, whereas the local community college graduation rate's roughly 15 or 16%. So within the intensivity of the programs we run, young people can still be successful in college. I think crunching those 2 simple metrics and finding all kinds of other data is really where we're trying to go. For example, so how many pounds of food do we produce per youth that's in our program, And we've had a look at that kind of data, and we know that over the years we've become more efficient, or the young people have become better at producing food, and so we produce more pounds of food per young person. We do some similar things that Clara has mentioned, like we do 360-degree individual assessments. So a young person assesses how they're doing in the program, and then their peers will assess how they're doing in the program, and we'll take a look at those two measures to see how realistic a young person is, both sets of data. There are a couple of opportunities we're trying to look at where some funders are really data driven, and we're hoping that we can explore really understanding our impact on a broader scale and a deeper scale with those funders. So just a quick example would be, what is the secret sauce to get a kid through, get a young person, an intern through our programs, even if they don't succeed in college? Because we know some young people haven't succeeded in college and they're doing really, really well. When they come back here, they're like, oh, I miss the farm, or oh, the farm gave me this, or I really feel like this. And they're very anecdotal kinds of evaluations. We're trying to figure out a way we can bottle those and share those with people.
There are a couple of questions here from the audience about how you select the youth to join the program, and if there are, if you work with anyone who is forced for, say, community service reasons or something, to work with you, if you work with any youth in that situation.
Hi, yeah, it's Kawi here. I'm the farm manager at Ma'o and one of the graduates of the program. So in the presentation, Uncle Gary mentioned about there's a summer ramp-up portion of the program where we recruit students from the local high schools in our community. And in that 10-week program, they're part of the internship, so they work on the farm. But then they also have these classes that we go through, and we set these young guys up to kind of give them like a snapshot of what college and working on the farm would look like. And it's in that process, at the end of the 10 weeks, they do a pitch of why they want to be in the program. And it's in that pitch of giving them that their own empowerment and understanding like what they can do for the community. So it's like really a turnaround experience to not say we want to recruit them, but it's like having them pitching why they want to be here and be a part of this movement. We do evaluations on their work, and their school GPAs. But a lot of the requirement basically for an internship to come in is you have to be a high school graduate or have your GED, and we kind of go from there, and we kind of go through a lot of in those classes. We go from things about doing some Oli protocol, so like some chanting protocol, because we do some protocol here when we have huge events, all the way to prepping for college prep to emotional intelligence. And to get these young adults, especially the ages 17 to 24, prepared for those kinds of things, it's foreign to them, They don't have that access growing up. I didn't have that access growing up, so to be in a space where all of that was available kind of opened my eyes to see that there's other options for me, and this is an option. I attended the program not wanting to be a farmer at all. Like I just really found this as an outlet for me to go to school, and as I got my tuition paid and I worked more hours on the farm, I found out that I really loved being outside, and I loved growing food, and I loved eating food, and I loved seeing the success of my friends and my community members a lot more than making money, I guess. Though making money is very important. Now I'm a salary employee here, but I'm also a teacher, a friend, a mentor, a learner, and all of that kind of encompasses the things that we provide for our youth here. So yeah.
Clara, how does Grow Dat choose?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I was very enchanted by that response. Thank you, Kai. That's really cool to hear. We actually kind of have a similar-ish approach in that the question that we ask young people is, why do you want to come work at Grow Dat? It's a little bit different because we're working mostly with high schoolers, 15 to 22. And so we go to these 9 partner schools and we pitch to the partner schools, and the partner schools have community liaisons that help young people fill out applications and attend an interview day at Grow Dat, where we're sort of helping young people for whom many this is a first-time job experience, go through some of the typical hurdles of getting a job. We don't have a community service or some sort of, aspect of our program where a young person is obligated to be there. However, some young people who are part of alternative high schools here are able to sort of earn some internship credit by working at Grow Dat. So once they've gone through a short application process and interview day, then they are a part of the program from there.
Thank you, Clara. Jeff, do you have another question from the audience?
Yeah, I have one of the sort of recurring questions in the work that all of us do. How do you balance the need to keep food affordable for the community while also the need to meet your earned income goals and the need to pay a living wage to the youths who work on the farm?
Yeah, so I think that one of the ways that we do this that I know Gary had mentioned earlier is that we encourage young people to take home as much food as they can to their families. We also have a cooking part of our program to make sure that young people are knowledgeable about the food that they're taking home and cooking that food with their families. We found, we donate 30% of all of the produce that we grow to other youth organizations and organizations around New Orleans. And we were finding that sometimes that food wasn't going anywhere because the places that were our partners and the participants in their programs didn't necessarily know what to do with that food, which helped us launch our newest program, our Food Justice Project program, where we're going into communities and actually teaching some basic cooking lessons and skills. But in terms of how to strike that balance, it's a constant conversation, and it's really one of the reasons why I think that for us, and we're only growing on 2 acres, so this is a really different scale, but we, it is unlikely that we're going to be able to achieve a higher percentage of our fundraising through earned revenue as long as we're really committed to the community having access to a substantial percentage of the food that we are producing. And then in our CSA as well, there's an opportunity for folks who might have more means to supplement some of the costs for a CSA share for someone else in the community. And we also accept SNAP benefits as well. So we're always looking for ways that we can bring our food into the community. We don't do a lot of wholesale. It is mostly directly through our CSA or through our farmers market program. And so that's sort of where we are with the places that our food goes.
That's great. So, some things very similar. I would say we set our prices for our vegetables based on a whole bunch of things: business reasons, cost of production, kinds of reasons. We also look at the local market here via some of our friends in the restaurant industry. They share with us pricing of products that are imported. So we really juggle things around and try to set the price to be competitive with imported products, because especially in the wholesale situation, import substitution is something we're really trying to achieve. In our own community, we discount the farmers market produce by 25%, and then in our community you can purchase our CSA box using EBT or food stamps, and you can also get if you can hook up with one of the local community health centers, you can obtain a double bucks program. So a $32 CSA, you can pick it up for $16. It's one of those things. It's not an easy. There's no one size fits all answer. We sort of bob and weave between a whole bunch of different things, and even to this day, people come to a farmers market in Honolulu and complain that our prices are higher, and I'll go down to a local Safeway and you'll see a bunch of chard much more expensive. And I think for us, the answer to this question is partly educational. So having the youth, exactly like Clara said, eat food, take food home, provided classes on how to eat those food, create recipes for themselves is a big part of everything we do. We're in Hawaii too. Kawi just went to the Indigenous Food Sovereignty Conference up in Milwaukee. She sent me a text of a bunch of beets, which was $2, and I think our beet at local market were about $4. So it's a complicated thing, but I think the situated as a social enterprise and a non-profit social enterprise for us, the funds that we can make can go back into our community, and so that is also part of how we educate our point of sale. So the restaurateurs and the Whole Foods of the world and the other grocery stores we sell to, I think they no matter what happens, they want top quality products, but I think at the backdrop being healthy food systems and community-based food systems, and then helping our community is critically important, and letting them know how that works is a huge part of how we do things.
Right on. Well, thank you all so very much for spending time with us today. I feel like we could keep this conversation going all afternoon. And I have so many other questions I want to ask you, but just really appreciate all of you taking your time away from the farms and the youth to be with us, and for sharing your wisdom and experience with us. To the listeners out there, I want to encourage you to check out the community food website that the Kellogg Foundation set up to present all of the different stories that are within From the Ground Up, the report. And there's a parallel report on intertribal food systems that also has a number of amazing community food projects featured within it. So please go and check out this website. There's a really fun interactive map that features the organizations from both reports, and you can learn more and explore these different stories there. And just very quickly, coming out of this work, we are very excited to soon be launching a new food systems leadership network that is aiming to build the capacity of emerging and existing leaders working on food systems change. This is launching directly out of this work from the Ground Up report. And we're really excited to be offering a number of new resources to staff and leaders from nonprofit organizations across the country. We're going to have mini grants available, leadership intensive, e-learning series, mentorships, etc. So a lot of great resource available there. Stay tuned for that. Also have our NGFN conference coming up. Jeff, you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. And before I do, I just want to echo Susan's thank you to our panelists. It just strikes me just how loving and nurturing these organizations are, both structurally, but also clearly personally. It's super moving. So thank you. So yeah, mark your calendars. The 4th Biennial National Good Food Network conference is in Albuquerque, New Mexico this coming spring. We are planning for 500 practitioners of good food. Although we retain our traditional focus for this conference on food hubs, we are really expanding the scope for the conference this year to include those businesses and organizations who work with and support food hubs and their mission to aggregate and distribute locally grown food, as well as community organizations, but we retain our nuts and bolts approach, and it only comes around every 2 years, so do mark your calendar. Registration is not yet available, but we are now accepting proposals for sessions and workshops. So you can visit wallacecenter.org/NGFN conference to learn more about the conference and how to propose a session. The Wallace Center, through its National Good Food Network, has been presenting these high-quality webinars for years now. And like this one, they are all recorded and archived on the NGFN site. There have been a few questions about that. You can go directly there by visiting ngfn.org/webinars. Our webinars are tagged by topic in the left-hand navigation area, so you can dive into topics that most interest you. And there are also always registration links for upcoming planned webinars. I mentioned that this is or I guess we both mentioned that this is the second of our 4 community food webinar series based on different themes that emerged in this Wallace Center report that we did for the Kellogg Foundation. You will be able to find links to this and the previous webinar on ngfn.org, and then again, signups. The next 2 focus on organizations that engage and enrich their community around traditional cultural foods. And then in December, we look at how success in food systems really requires a system. That is a collection of different organizations and practitioners working on shared goals together. Also, January, we will host our colleagues at Michigan State University's Center for Regional Food Systems as we present the results of the 3rd Biennial National Food Hub Survey, really the state of the art of what food hubs are doing and how they're doing. You can request that you sign up, that we automatically sign you up for any of those webinars in our post-webinar survey. It just takes 2 minutes. You can also give us some feedback, your impressions of this webinar today. So thank you to our audience. Thank you again to our panelists, and we will see you again in a few weeks. Take care. This concludes the webinar.